Well, welcome to another episode of Talking About Country, which is part of Rim Shots with Sean, which is part of Barstools and Band Talk. Safe to say, I have a legend here today.
Oh,
Yeah, he laughs, but he's got the resume to back it up. Mr. Eddie Byers, sir, how are you?
great. How are you, John? Sean, it's good to see you.
Good. I want to start with this. I had the opportunity yesterday to interview Rich Redmond,
Oh, yeah.
and I told him that you were coming on. He says, "Can you do me a favor? Can you thank him because he said that he sent you a demo and you responded with a handwritten note, basically saying, hey, keep up the good work, keep going after it." And he said it was something that really affected him, so he wanted me to pass that along.
Oh, yeah. He's a good soul. I love Rich. I did his. He had an interview or some kind of network thing he did, and it was great reconnecting with him.
Awesome. I want to start with this because I read up on you, obviously, and I know what you've done. But there's a gentleman that was a mentor of yours who I never met, but in two songs kind of changed my outlook on playing drums, and that was the one, the only Mr. Larry London. You were a keyboard player that all of a sudden, people are going, "How does a keyboard player become like a legendary session guy?" What was that journey like for you?
Well, it goes years past, about 1973. I came into Nashville like any other musician, you know, hoping and seeking work. And I heard about an audition down at the Carousel Club, which is in Printer's Alley here in Nashville. So I went down, sat just like there were three or other four people before me. And Larry was kind of overseeing the auditions. And so each keyboard player got up. So it came my turn. And I got up and played with the band with Larry. And when we got done, he said, "You're our guy." He said, so, and now, of course, I'm thrilled because this is like a resident, it's like 5 days a week at this club, which is perfect. And of course, since that time, Larry and I became very close. And so much happened during the year that I was with him. I told him, I said, I can simul play drums too. And he said, well, if there's anything you want to know, he said, I keep practice pads up in the top of the club here. So anything you want to know, I'll take you up and show you what I know. And so he took me up and he started showing me a lot of the rudiments and everything like that, which were basic and could get more complex. And at that time, I said, Larry, I said, I've been classically trained in my life, which to me was an interpretive mode. I don't demean, I love being able to play my classics, but I said, as far as drums, I just want to beat them. He said, oh, okay. So probably about 6 months into it, he was going out with like Chet Atkins and Waylon Jennings live on the road. And he said, I'm going to tell the owner that you know the show and why not just let me play? And of course, I'm thrilled to death. So he leaves and I get in early just to sit behind his kit, and I put my foot on his kick pedal and I couldn't push it down. And anybody that knows of Larry knew the one thing about his kick pedal, it was famous. That you don't just sit in and play that kick pedal.
Right.
You better have everything behind you to be able to push that kick pedal. So I did it and I couldn't do it. I thought it was locked and it wasn't. I went down the alley and begged for a normal kick pedal. I got it. I played it. But just during that time, finding out who Larry was, how, through the Motown records and through other sessions that he had done here in Nashville. My respect for him, and plus my blessing of being able to be mentored by him. He was such a phenomenal soul and player. So
the thing for me, and this is a guy who grew up playing rock drums, he had these wonderful little hi-hat things going on that you were like, what's going on there? And he would do them in such a way that, to me, you got to get back to the snare, but it would just seemed effortless, and just and wonderful accents and different sorts of patterns that he played that were just, I wouldn't call them stock patterns. They were just very musical.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he transferred so much of that to me. That is some of the things I took on, that when I was playing and as I was coming up through the session world, that people would note. One of the great producers that I got into his rhythm section was Barry Beckett. So people who know of Barry from the Muscle Shoals rhythm section, he came to Nashville and was seeking out people to be in his Nashville rhythm section. And it was wonderful. I went into that. And he always made the comment. He said, your hi-hat, he said, it's not just a normal playing hi-hat. He said, your hi-hat dances. That's what he called it. And
perfect.
And that's where I said I got that from Larry London,
Well, it's funny because like a lot of people don't think of the hi-hat in the same context as the ride cymbal, right?
Right.
But really, I mean, why not? And I mean, those are wonderful moving things that if you can do it right, then it's fantastic. I looked at your CV, and I did it really quickly beforehand, and you're sitting there laughing when I say legend, but I mean, like, a lot of songs that people would know you played on. That's got to be a pretty cool. Like you're like Hal Blaine in a sense, in that you hear a song on the radio and you go, Hal Blaine played, and I do this all the time, and I've been doing it since Robin introduced us, where I'll hear a song and I'll go like, I wonder who played. Oh, that's Eddie, and it's interesting. That must be pretty gratifying after all these years to say, man, I really put my stamp on this thing they call Nashville.
Yeah, no, it absolutely. I can basically, when it comes to the accolades and things like that, those are what they are. But I think the significance of efforts that I did over these years, they are meaningful to me, because the artists that I work with, the musicians I work with, the producers, the engineers that I work with, that's what means a lot to me. Like you said, if yes, you do put your stamp on it, and to know that a lot of those recordings stand the test of time.
No question.
And that's another thing that I really appreciate. And I think the other thing that I appreciate was that it's not a genre specific. I was diversified from not only working here in Nashville with the George Strait, the Alan Jackson, the Judds, and so on, but in the other side was doing like 4 Bob Seger records, Peter Frampton, Steve Winwood, Mark Knopfler, and those were meaningful things to me too. Not that one was greater than the other, because the one thing I always did, and I still school when I do get into a teaching mode, is don't be genre based. Listen to every genre that you appreciate, and go back in history and listen to the great records, and you'll see why those records are continually great, in people's minds. And because I said, genre is more of a business, as we know. If you come into Nashville, the labels are country based. And so if you're signed here, you'll be in the country division of whatever particular entity that is, whether it's Warner Brothers, Universal, so on. But as we know, in today's world, those people signed in these labels have crossed over into other genres, which I appreciate, because I never thought that a genre encapsulates an artist. I think the artist can do whatever they want, to show their artistry and their likes of music. When I did the Knopfler album, Golden Heart, he wanted to do specifically 2 standard country songs, which we did, and he honored them. And so all that mixed in, and I just appreciate that crossing, that nobody was subject to any genre. They just loved that music, and they're gracing the music and holding it up, inclusive of what they're known for, whether it's rock or jazz or anything like that.
I'd be interested to hear this from you, because obviously anybody that has played live and then played in the studio, they're two different beasts. You have to set yourself up. I mean, some people might say they're the same, but I'd kind of like to get your 2 cents on what your day might have looked like. Like, I read about some of the guys that used to do a lot of session work, and they'd be at the studio all day long banging off one takers and kind of putting it on the board and in the next. Was that kind of how you did it?
The great thing about our system here, of course, being schooled, I mean, I could read notation, but they came up with, everybody I know goes round and round about our number system.
Right.
And, it basically correlates to the key of the song, but it can be transferred into any key. But the great thing about it is, to your question, is that it opens up your capability of being creative. You're not specifically married to a notated chart to play what has been written. So a lot of the music here was able to be played, but just seeing the numbers, it gave you freedom so that you could converse with the bass player or whatever, however you were going to coordinate a specific feel or the beats that were going to be played within the song, unless they were specified by a producer to say, no, I want you to play this specific beat to this. And
well, I got a question regarding the number system. I mean, because obviously a lot of people talk about it, and it's almost like, if you don't know it, you're speaking French or German or something to somebody. But did you use that from the start? Did you have a hand in maybe putting your stamp on it at all? Like, how would that look for you?
No, the number system started back. Actually, before, there was a guy, Neil, who worked with the Jordanaires. He innovated on the number system to make it what it is. And then since then, there are great people who know the number system who have been able to innovate on that. Basically, as we know, it's like a master chart. If you see the key of C, and it goes from that 2 bars of C to 2 bars of F, that's what you play. Well, in a number system, it's 2 bars of 1, 2 bars of 4. Because in a diatonic scale, it kind of adheres to the 1, 1, 4, 4. So that's kind of like the number system. It can go further than that if it was going to go from 1 to a 1 sharp diminished, or whatever, or 4 to 4 sharp, or 4 to 2 over 4 sharp. So all of it can be understood, even if you're musically inclined, how the number system can work. But the great thing about it is, if you were within a particular session and the producer or the artist says, I need this to be a half step higher. Well, as we all know, if it's notated, then all of a sudden everybody's going, oh my God, well, I got to transpose, all this. And in the number system, each number correlates to the key that you're in.
So I said to Rich yesterday, just some of the stuff he was laying down is like, take away drummer jokes, one joke at a time. And how were there ever any drummer jokes with you around? Because, I mean, we as drummers, we get kind of, well, we're the butt of jokes. But I mean, that's some very stylistic, very theoretical types of things that you're talking about there, that a lot of people probably wouldn't realize if they wanted to kind of get into that world, that they would have to know.
Well, it when you look at it logically, it makes perfect sense, because a lot of the players, as you know, in your world or my world, they're seasoned players. I play with great guitars and basses and keyboards, and they really know their music, so they appreciate the number system, because then they're free
Right.
to be able to take their influences or their inspiration of what they hear in this song when somebody plays. And the great thing is, a lot of our great producers have done their homework, working with the artist, getting the itinerary for the songs that are going to be recorded. So in a lot of cases, we are booked as a chemistry. And so when we're in there, a lot of the producers just go, you guys listen to the demo and do what you think should be done to this. And so everybody collaborates, comes out with it. And it also gives the artist and the producer capability of hearing how you did something or translated it. Then they can fine tune it, maybe more into what they would like to hear. And so that's the beauty of the number system. And so people who get in it and would really appreciate the freedom that it does. And I know in some cases it doesn't, you don't have a control. I know when I did records with Mike Post, from LA, who is a great orchestrator and writer, the things I did with him were totally notated. So you were subject to how he orchestrated this. And that's fine. But I would always, as getting to know Mike, I would have the freedom to go up. I said, Mike, the chart is wonderful, but a fill that you wrote out here, I wouldn't play a fill like that.
Right.
So he would say, oh, just play whatever fill you want. So.
Well, but I mean, that would obviously speak to, your credibility within the industry, because probably if it was anybody else, they'd be like, no, this was written for a reason. But no, we have Eddie Bayers here who knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So they're going to trust you. And I mean, again, when I referred to you as legend, I mean, you laughed, and I know, you want to come across as humble, but I mean, you have to understand the mark you put on that time period when you were out there doing, like, I looked at all your things, and I hear this music now. I was doing a gig on the weekend, and some of the Dolly Parton stuff that you played on came up, and I said to my friend, I said, I'm talking with this guy that did this and all these other things, and he's like, forget about it. But he's like, man, that guy, like, just distinctive drums. I mean, you got to realize where your place is in history with still being humble.
Yeah, and a lot of that is also in evolution, because back in the 70s and the 80s, when I did some of the records, whether it was Dolly, whether it was George Strait, and the Judds and people like that, and continuing with Winona, those records, grew, and they were innovated on as well. And then I think it was later on that it started getting a little more freedom to where that artist could branch out and use their influences, even if it's a country song,
right?
Which creates a lot of controversy as it went on, because somebody would just say, that's not country, that's, and that's going on even now. I'm sure the whole Grammy.
Well, and I want to ask, without putting you on the spot, because I don't want you to answer something that you feel might be salacious, and that's not my point. But it was, and I don't know if you saw the meme yesterday. It was George Strait wins Hip Hop Artist of the Year. Yeah, and I mean, you would have seen some of those markers where, okay, they call it the outlaw country. Then you get the new country. You would have seen that. What was the appetite when some of that stuff was coming in? Were people kind of digging in with their arms folded? Did you just go, hey, this is another gig? How did they approach it?
No, I think everybody, and the thing that I always did as I was getting my notoriety, if I went in on a recording and the artist would come with, oh my God, you played on some of my favorite records. I grew up, listening to you, or learn, whatever influence. And I would always say, listen, just understand one thing, that from this record we're going to be doing, that I'm doing with you, I'm your drummer. You run anything by me that you want to hear. The slate is wiped clean. Now, if there's something prior that I did, you said, I'd really love for you to play something similar that you did on a specific effort, I'd go, yeah, fine, I can do that. But I said, otherwise, don't feel like you're below asking me, could you do this or do that? Because maybe rudimentarily, whatever the word would be, is something you don't know anything about. Because I said, that's not it. I would try anything, you know. And then if it's something I try and then you go, no, you know what, just do what you think you should do. But I would always give that opening to them to let them know that I am not bringing anything into this session other than me and the talent that I have to offer.
I want to geek out a little bit, if I may. Some very for the stuff that you played on and all the eras that you covered, some very specific sounding drums. Was kind of dry, maybe a snare sound a little fat, tom sound a little dead. What was it? Did you do your own tuning? Did you handle your own tuning? Did you have somebody that was a tech for you when you're doing that? How did that work?
Actually, for at the beginning, I did.
Yeah.
But as it went on, there was a guy that I knew in Los Angeles when I would go out there to record, Harry McCarthy. And he has an operation called Drum Paradise. And he is a tech. That's the one thing that I stipulate, that we can all tune and do what we want, but there are people who are gifted, no different than the musical side. And somebody like Harry is gifted as a tech, and he can tune a set of drums. And so from that point on that I went with him, I would just leave it to him, because when he would deliver my drums to a specific studio, he would tweak them, tune them up, and he's continuing on. I'm still with him today. In fact, I'll be doing some sessions Monday and Tuesday, specifically with Chuck Ainley and other great engineers that I work with, and they'll make sure that that kit sounds great. I think the other thing to answer your question is that if an engineer says, oh, I want them a little deader, well, as you know, we have apparatus gels.
Yeah,
that we
there used to be gaff tape and paper towel and stuff, right?
Yeah, I remember I was there's another great drummer here, Evan Hutchings, a younger that I've watched progress and do great. And when I would hear recordings that he did, they were specifically that. And I would always call him. I'd say, Evan, I said, could the drums be any deader?
Yeah.
And he said, you wouldn't believe how gaffed up every drum was.
Yeah.
To get that sound. But, you know, from you go back to Roger Nichols and some of the great Steely Dan records and stuff like that, those drums, that's what they were. They were dead.
Yeah.
But rhythmically, it just somehow and sonically fit into that specific recording. So.
And I think, I mean, maybe you would agree with this, because I've become the guy that I've never wanted to become as a drummer. Like I always said, I didn't want to use in-ears because it would affect my feel, and then I started using in-ears, and now if my in-ears aren't perfect, I'm complaining, and I've kind of been that guy that everything's got to be perfectly lined up for me to feel great. But what was it like? But like you'd have headphones, but did you get this amazing sound, or did you have to go, man, these are dead drums, and I got to find my way through it?
Well, all of that, as you know, are coordinating with great headphones.
Right.
And of course, now we have the multi-boxes, and the engineers are great, where there are some of the old school engineers that can give you a 2-mix, as you know what that is.
Yep.
Just a stereo image. But then there's others who have all the more me on your 8-channel box or 16-channel box. And you can, you raise a specific instrument up higher, or the vocal up, things like that. So I think the engineers, every engineer is gifted, no different than musicians. So I'm well aware of what they like. Like I was working in the studio, there's an engineer named John Kelton. I've done great records with him, from Alan Jackson to Jamie O'Neill, some great records that came through that Keith Stegall produced. And if you went out and hit my drums, you know, for him that he wants, they would ring for days.
Right.
Hit the snare, it's just ringing. The toms are ringing, everything. The thing is his capability was to use that ring in lieu of verbs. So it would lengthen the verb as it rang further and not have to manufacture its own thing. Somehow he pulls everything in and the drums are just wonderful, you know. So
so this is a question, and I'm glad I have you on because I never get to ask it of somebody. And I think about some of the great studio players, you know, yourself, the Hal Blaines, the Jeff Piccaros, and those guys. But you know, you've got all this technology now where, you know, I recorded, oddly enough, it was a country song I was recording for somebody, and I made one little flub, and the rest of the take was good, and they just kind of moved the flub on the bar graph and fixed it. I didn't play the, you know, and somebody said, "Oh, well, you're cheating." Well, no, I'm just taking advantage of technology. But do you remember what it was like when because you would have started in an era where, you know, if the song was 2 minutes long and you flubbed it at 150, you were starting all over again and doing a fresh take.
That's exactly right.
So do you remember how you embraced that and what the thought was when some of this newer technology sort of came in?
Well, it depended. Back in the day, there was a lot of back and forth, even about using a click.
Right.
So a lot of, I don't want to use a click. I said, okay, that's all well and good. I said, but the way I look at it is when an artist or producer says, I want that a little bit faster, well, that's kind of like an open term because you and I know we could go to a guitar player who's playing a specific tempo and say, I want it a little faster. You and I both know that if he plays it faster, he might be 10 beats faster. 50,
well, you know? It's funny you mentioned that because it's always a guitar player will be like, well, I don't need to click. I'll play to you. It's like, will you?
Oh, okay. That's fine. But I think the way it would work back then, I said, if you want it a little faster, at least let me have the click going and everybody play a couple of beats faster. And if that's what you want, then that's what we'll do it at. Even shut the click off. But I said what I'm getting to is that everybody has in their mind what faster or slower is.
Right, right.
This would lock everybody in. So even when I take the click off, everybody's going to kind of be within the same general area and not be so far off. And it's great too. It acclimates the band to that specific tempo. So when you shut it off, you're going to pretty well be adhering to that tempo. It's not going to be spot on, but it doesn't need to be.
Right. So. Right. Is there, I mean, how many, you probably don't know the exact amount of songs that you've recorded, but you know, thousands, I would wager.
Yeah.
Is there a signature piece or two that if I was to say to somebody, you know, go and check this out if you want to get Eddie's vibe, that it would be, is there a few of those that come to mind for you?
Well, the ones that I'm more noted for, I think there's some that people haven't heard or did well, but they didn't reach the level that everybody adheres to. Oh, that was a #1 record or top 10. So there are a few. I love Mark Knopfler's Darling Pretty that I did on that record. That's a great recording. Vince Gill, we did Eliza Jane. That's kind of like a signature because that's me and Willie Weeks.
Right.
And then there's other ones. Actually, one didn't really see the light of day, but it's called Married to a Memory by Steve Wariner. And Dave Loggins wrote the song. I was given freedom on that song to be able to do whatever I want. So I did. So if you ever can Google Married to a Memory by Steve Wariner, you'll see what I mean. My cross-stick pattern is more complex and Latin type. And the kick drum and the snare are not exactly in a normal space. So those are things I like to highlight. There's other records I did. One is called That's That, and that was on Michael Johnson. Mm-hmm. And it's a great recording. So I think, you know, in a lot of Winona's records, that Tell Me Why is a great record, kind of up tempo. So yeah, there's so many though, Sean, that it would be hard to sit around to say, would that be me? I think what it is I think you know as well as me that if our drums are set up and I play them and they're being recorded or the engineer's hearing them, if you had another drummer come in right behind you, the drums are going to sound different.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the thing I noticed, that each one of us kind of put our signature on our kit. I know we have our drums that we love to play and the snare we love to use, but they will sound different if another drummer, if you were sitting up there playing and then I come in right behind you, they are going to sound different.
No question.
Yeah.
Well, and my impression of you has always been your drumming to me sounds happy, peppy. Even if you're doing a slow number, it doesn't sound like, you know how you hear some drummers and they're great, but it's like behind the beat. And
Yeah.
certain drummers you hear they're almost falling off the stool, so behind the beat because that's what the song is requiring. But for me, if I was to describe your drumming, it would be upbeat and happy is what the vibe I get from it.
You know, you nailed it, because the one thing, and I'm sure you've had this throughout your life, maybe there's another musician or even another drummer that is complaining and they're whining about the innovations, whether it's the audio quantizing that you know of and I know of. I said, look, the thing I look at is we're in a service industry.
Yep.
When I get there, I just appreciate the fact that I get up that day and I'm going to make a wage by getting to play music.
Yeah, man.
And it doesn't matter what music it is to me. I don't care.
Have you ever been in a spot? Because when I talked to Robin, when I interviewed Robin, and we had a great chat, she was talking about Picaro would try to get his buddies work that were maybe not working and stuff like that. And sometimes somebody will ask me to do something, and I'll be like, that's not me, but I know who it is, and I'm going to refer you to them. Have you done that in the past?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not frequently, but there has been cases where somebody has come in. Ironically, is my wife, who is a great jazz singer, and David Hungate, as you know, from Toto.
Yep.
Yeah, he was producing her record, and it was more of like a smooth jazz record. And I was forthright with him. But I said, I'm not the guy for that. I mean, I can do it, but there are guys out there that's their ting, as Carlos Vega always said. That's my ting.
Yeah.
And so we got a wonderful drummer named Chris Brown came in, and I kind of executive produced with David. And ironically, David did not play bass. He had Jim Ferguson upright, and he played the archtop on the record. A great record. But that was some of the cases that I will do that. If I think it could be served better of something that's not really inside of me, that I think the effort would be more well represented by somebody who knows that, and I know can perform it.
So that to me speaks, because again, I'm probably doing a little bit more out of, I don't want to waste your time. I've got somebody that can do it. And I guess musically speaking too, but I mean, I think that it takes a great confidence to do that, to be able to say, hey, you know what? I do this stuff really well.
Yeah.
I don't do that really well, but here's who doesn't. Because I think this is just my opinion, I think you're going to get more calls because of that, because they're going to identify you as somebody that's not going to waste their time.
Oh yeah, I believe that too. And the other thing is that we're to thine own self be true. Yeah, I could do that, but it's going to be more manufactured than performed.
Right. Yeah.
Because
great point.
Yeah. So I know guys who perform it, and for what you want to do and the effort you're doing would serve better to have this specific guy or that specific guy, and so yeah, I will always do that. It doesn't come up often because most people who call me, they know they want me. So
yeah, absolutely. Are you at a point in your life now where you go, and I would say you would be, where probably, your early years, you take everything that was thrown at you because you're trying to make a name for yourself. And as as Mitch said yesterday, drummers have to learn to play 2 and the 4 because that's how they buy houses, which I thought was a really funny line. But are you to the point now where you pretty much get to pick and choose, and if you don't want something, you don't have to do it. You just take whatever I guess brings you joy as well as gives you money?
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
So the thing I appreciate is that there are things more in workhorse land where there's demo and other houses that come in. There's some specific people I know that I used to work for where you would come in and he would have 30 songs. And because he would cater to people who want to come in and do their demo or their record or their songs, and I would not be able to be that person anymore because I wouldn't have the stamina
Right.
to just do 30 songs in a day, so and the other great thing, it opens up the door for those who are coming in. They're great drummers and they're doing that now, which is where I came in. So it opens up the door for them,
Well, and I was trying to think of what I was going to end on, but I want to end on that because Robin told me a bunch of things about, Picaro and Keltner and those guys that, helped out. And Rich had a great line, in order to get, you got to give. And in terms of mentoring people, and I mean, you mentioned Larry was your mentor, and sometimes you don't want to mentor people, but you're forced to. Do you have anybody, and I won't ask you to name names, but are you always looking for that next person that you can kind of, have that relationship with in a way that when you go, look, I finally, I don't want to do this anymore, but I want to make sure that I'm happy with what's happening out there in the world, that I don't have to do it anymore. Do you have any people like that in your life?
Yeah. There's actually Barry Beckett's son, Mark Beckett. When he was 13, which he's now like 45, but his father, I was working with Barry, called, said, well, lo and behold, Mark wants to be a drummer. So I was able to come in and really mentor him. But in most cases, Sean, I look at it like when somebody either gives me their tape or wants that, I said, I tell you what, the one thing I can do is I can give you more of a head clinic rather than a performance clinic. And I'm open to give you things that would be helpful as you're going in and you're playing. And of course, some of this we touched on, don't be genre specific. The other thing is don't be judgmental as far as what you think is below another style of music. It doesn't matter whether it's the most simple country song or whether it's a complex rock song or jazz fusion or anything like that, so. And the other thing is to always realize that when you're going in and wanting to make a living, you don't call them, they call you.
Yes, absolutely.
So whoever it is that comes in, be open for everything and have a great attitude, and so, yeah. And there's several people that I brought in, just like with Rich, when he sent me his tape, he was in a senior year at North Texas, and he sent me the tape, and it was big band, and I was blown away. As you know, what a phenomenal player.
Yep.
So when he moved here, he got in touch with me, and at first there were things about him wondering. He said, why is it taking so long? He was wondering. I said, Rich, I'm telling you, get in with the music community, fold in with them, because when you do that, there's other players that do have openings or power per se to be able to say, listen, I do demos for so-and-so, and I would love to recommend you to do that. And things can go where they were, and sure enough, but as things, got further into Rich's life, the Jason Aldean not only turned into being a drummer for the band, but he does the recordings too, and he does a lot of other recordings. So, that's all wide open with the people that I talk to. I've had people, Tommy Harden, who's right now, he's with Alabama. He goes out and does it, but he's a great session player. When he first came to town, he sought me out, talked to me. And basically what I was able to do was, of course, I listened to things of him playing. I said, man, you're a great player. Let me use my connections. And I did. And it opened up a door for him to be able to get in with Ricky Skaggs, an artist. And from that, you get to know other musicians. So it just, evolves from that. But yes, there are always openings to me that I can always be there as an ear and an eye for you if anybody needs it.
Well, when I get down to Nashville for a visit, I want to ask you this, and I'll ask. Hopefully, you'll do. I would like to take you out for a coffee and shut my mouth and listen to your stories for a couple hours.
You got a date,
because playing is one thing, but the whole bit about the struggle to get there, and then you're there, and I would think too that you never really arrive to a certain point because somebody's always after your gig, right?
Yeah.
So you got to keep working. You got to keep improving. You got to keep doing your thing. It's not like you've arrived and now I sit back with my feet up on the desk. And so those are the things that I'd love to do. So, sir, when I get down there, expect a call.
Well, and it's the people that you meet, not only just in literally playing.
Yeah.
But people like Robin that
Yes.
She has been such a champion for us.
Yeah.
Especially when she was involved in writing her articles and everything. She is a big part of my life by me being noted and taking things out when somebody says, "Oh, you played on this and this and this," but nobody else is going to rise that to the top. But she did.
Yeah, and the thing that when I met Robin, because a friend of mine challenged me, he's a guy that was a drummer here locally, and then he moved to Toronto, and he said, "You should get her on." I bet you can't get her on. There's no way. And I reached out to her, and she did, and I kind of, I got her.
That's her.
I clicked with her immediately, and one of the things that I told her, I said, "I promise you, no matter what you do for me, I will never embarrass you. My name will never be a source of pain or angst."
Yeah.
And I've lived up to that so far. But she spoke so highly of you, and I was like, man, oh man, I got to have a chat with this guy.
I'm glad she did, Sean. And it's so great to meet you. And certainly, when you do come, you give me a heads up.
You have a promise, and you know what? I won't expect to sleep on your couch. I'll get my own accommodations, but I will buy a coffee or dinner. We'll make that happen, sir.
I'll look forward to that.
Mr. Byers, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sean.